Hi, everyone, and welcome to the 2020 first ever digital Liverpool Arab Arts Festival. In case you're unfamiliar with LAF, we are the oldest and largest annual celebration of Arab arts and culture in the UK. This is our 22nd festival, and we have 17 acts and well over 50 artists. Just pause to imagine for a moment. All of this began with a small weekend of acts put together because community activists wanted to have something for the local community. We're very proud of that beginning. All of the events in this, our first ever digital festival, are free, and there are several more after tonight. Tomorrow night is a conversation between acclaimed historian and writer Tim McIntosh Smith with Irish novelist Denise Woods, as well as some readings from Tim's magnum opus, Arabs, a 3,000-year history of peoples, tribes, and empires. And it's a massive piece of work. And then Friday evening, we have the last of this series of conversations, Artists' Ideas Now, which will focus on conflict, colonialism, and the climate crisis. We have 4 wonderful artists lined up for you, and we'll also be making a big announcement about next year's festival. And then lastly, on Saturday, Dara Tribes will perform at 7 p.m. with a DJ to warm us all up beforehand, starting at 6. All of these events are free and accessible in the convenience and comfort of your own home, so please do join us for them. You can find the program on our website, which is arabartsfestival.com, and you can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook to see what's happening. Artists' Ideas Now has been curated in collaboration with Creative Destruction, which is an initiative to connect arts, activism, and politics by building a unique space where complex, radical, and new conversations can happen. And it's been a real pleasure to work with them. The theme of tonight's discussion is I Am Here, Artists Working Under Isolation. These panels, tonight's, the past one, and the one coming on Friday, include some of the most exciting artists from the MENA region and around the globe. And we've asked them to address the most pressing and complex conversations of the moment. So we very much hope you'll participate along with them in this conversation, because we all need to get involved if we're going to tackle the current and coming challenges. So a few words on operations. And if you were with us on Friday, this is a repeat, so I apologize. Please don't ask questions of the speakers until everyone has finished speaking, or we're just going to lose track of your question. So hang on and wait until questions open up. I'll tell you when. So if you think you're likely to want to participate, make sure you have somewhere to take notes so you can jot something down to remind yourself of your question. We do, however, want to encourage you to use the chat. And I know it wasn't working on Friday night, but it is open tonight. And you can use it to signal your agreement with pluses or thumbs up icons or something like that. You can drop links, whatever you want to do in there. Of course, please refrain from any personal attacks, inappropriate language, or divisive comments. LAF works to create positive conversations in everything we do. We love critique, but negativity is just out. And remember to use the Q&A at the bottom of your screen when you want to ask questions of the artists. The chat is for everyone to just kind of chat along the way. But we won't take questions from there. One last thing, but it's hardly the least important. If you're enjoying this or any of our free digital events, please take a minute and donate to LAF. This year has been among the most difficult for artists and for all of us, but especially for artists, in a long string of difficult years. 100% of the money that we raise from this festival will go towards commissioning artists for 2021. You'll be helping artists recover from the challenges of 2020. So please do give generously. There's a link on our website, arabartsfestival.com, and on our social media. On behalf of LAF, Creative Destruction, and tonight's speakers, I want to thank you for coming to this event. And with that, let's begin. The format will be that each artist will speak for 5 minutes, and then I'll open the conversation for them to speak to each other for a little bit, and then we'll open to your questions. Tonight's first speaker is Hurad Ulmesekyan, a painter, installation artist, and filmmaker whose work focuses on the impossibility of received historical and artistic narratives. In addition to his artistic work, he also writes in Asbarez, an Armenian newspaper, on contemporary artistic and political issues. And he was also one of the co-curators of the Armenian Film Festival of San Francisco and New York. Hurad?
Hi, hello everybody. I'm going to approach the topic of isolation from two separate yet connected perspectives. Isolation from within and without. The without is quite well known, and we're living through another one, however surreal. Again, but in one way or another, we have all navigated through. Although being from Lebanon, we were lucky that we faced less government censorship and a bit more self-appointed, and a bit more from self-appointed thought police, mainly from political parties and affiliated militias. Any mention of political aspect or the tackling of socioeconomic injustices in our work, especially criticizing those same political parties who were at the center of the violence, would put us in trouble. Being Armenian further complicated things. But the state institutions having disappeared, there was no recourse for us to redress. So you go through arts school studying color theory, composition, Western aesthetics, and art history comprised of famous artists and movements, all devoid of context. But lacking the ominous state apparatus and prosecutorial powers, we had become fairly adapted to navigate those obstacles, not only in art, but more importantly, in negotiating our daily lives. So in a funny way, a functioning state was something we longed for. But all of these facts are dated now, and I know Abed can speak about this a lot more of what the current situation is, because we left Lebanon on February the 19th, 1984, never to return. And having connected with the current generation of artists and curators, I know those dynamics have since completely changed. I'm going to go now for the inner isolation. What came as a surprise to me, that even in the safety of San Francisco and all the rights afforded by the US Constitution, I could not allow myself to base my work on experiences lived. Not immediately anyway. None of my teachers or classmates could relate to the experience either. Therefore, be able to provide guidance and or critique of my work beyond sympathy. After all, you can't bring up the subject without of war, having lived through a war, without bringing the attention upon yourself. Therefore, that nagging feeling that you are exploiting the collective's experience for your personal gain. And the question for a long time remained of where to start to unravel the narrative if I was going to tackle the issue. Here I have to refer to the internal Armenian discourse of trauma and silence. After the crime after 1915, the genocide, proper name Aret, catastrophe, we can talk about this later if you want to. The mute generation, as they had become known, were around us. They were our grandmothers, grandfathers, grandaunts, and uncles. They were all silent. And it did not matter which part of the world they found themselves in, they were unable to speak, to retell their stories, to recount what they had lived through. This aspect is that by no means uniquely Armenian, but for a very long time, Armenian literature and visual arts could not process it in any meaningful way. There were attempts, but not a lot of work. It's different now in the last 15, 20 years, but I will close this with this. In the end, it is not the post, nor the trauma, nor even the stress that counts, but the disorder, wherein resides the inner isolation. So that's what to overcome, I guess. That's it.
Thanks very much, Haddad. Okay, our next speaker is Abed Al-Qadiri, who has had a very challenging day because not least because in Lebanon there are power outages on and off without any warning. So we're hoping we're going to keep him with us for the whole panel. Abed was born in Beirut, and he's a multidisciplinary artist and curator whose work focuses on the deprivation of freedom in society by analyzing contemporary issues of violence, cultural heritage, migration, and belonging. Welcome, Abed.
Hello, Anahid. Thank you for your introduction. I'm really happy to be with you on this interesting discussion. Thank you, Harir and Sundos, Jack, and everyone else. Well, I'm not going to talk about isolation in specific here because I think artists usually kind of and
I bet you're cutting in and out quite badly.
but sometimes feeling like what is hello.
Hi, go ahead. I just wanted you to know you're cutting in and out.
I think because they were like trying to start the presentation. So I'll just to go straight to the point. I'll be talking about my last project as a curator, not as an artist, which is called Cities Under Quarantine, the Mailbox Project. This project was born in time of isolation lately when everything was in lockdown and here in Beirut. And like everyone else, I was questioning what would be our role as the world was shifting toward online. So at Dongola, which is a publishing house that I co-founded with my friend and my partner, Sarah Shabayek, 3 years ago in Beirut, I thought it would be a good idea to engage with artists that I know very well on a personal level, and I consider them a friend, like friends. So, you know, the idea came while I was doing my own artist book while I was confined in Beirut. It was my first experience dealing with artist book. And I quite enjoyed the experience. It gave me, you know, like kind of serenity, and I didn't feel like I'm really concerned about like the whole isolation or the lockdown state that we were witnessing here in Beirut, and of course all over the world. A very interesting quote came to my mind by John Baldessari when he said that it's difficult to put a painting in a mailbox. And as a painter, I totally, it rings a bell in my mind, and I found that okay, since we cannot travel and all the airports are closed, then I could send a book, an empty book, to all the artists that I worked with or I have a very good relationship with. A blank book where they can do the same practice, they can try, you know, because from like talking with other friends, I know that for instance, like a lot of stationery or art supplies shops, they closed immediately or suddenly, so they don't have any resources. They cannot get to their studios. So what I did, I started my communication with around, let's say at the beginning, there were 10 or 15 artists in Beirut and in the region. And I proposed the idea and they liked it. So I went and I bought the papers, and, you know, we started doing everything in hand at Dong, at the publishing house, from like cutting the paper, like a small envelope where you have the title of the project, and inside there will be the book. And, you know, we started sending these books to all the artists scattered in more than, you know, 19 cities. We ended up with 57 artists, each one working. But I mean, from the presentation, if you go down, you will see some of the like some of the results or some of the like, can you scroll down?
If Jack moves the presentation, we lose you. So it's a
no, the presentation is not moving, but
yeah, Jack says that he can't move the presentation because then something happens with your connection. It doesn't work.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. But what I would like to, or what I was saying, that you know, artists from Lebanon, Syria, Palestine, Paris, London, Amsterdam, you know, many other cities, they all completed the project. It was born as I said, as a direct reaction to what's happening, to reflect on the pandemic. For me, it was very important to document this period or this specific time with an artwork that can be later on exhibited. And again, you know, as a response to this online shift, where I still believe in, you know, handwork. I still believe in our like in the tangibility of and, you know, this is as a curator and how I usually reflect on isolation. But now, since the presentation cannot work, I think I wanted to talk like in 1 minute about my own practice as an artist, but I'd rather not, because, you know, I wanted to explain from images. But if whoever is interested to know more about my practice, I'm having a show at Tanit Gallery in less than 2 weeks, and this specific body of work actually talks about my my state, or how I experience on a personal level the state of isolation, and how it reflected on my work. It's a series that I could say it's a series of black paintings, and they represent this state of despair and, you know, isolation and insomnia. So this would, like, anyone who's interested can, as I said, he can go to Tanit Gallery or to my Facebook page and can see some of the works in the future. Thank you.
That's great, Abed. Thank you. And just so you know, and everyone else knows, the links to the project that you were talking about are in the chat, so people can go and see the things that couldn't be shown on screen.
Perfect.
Okay. And our last speaker is Sonda Shabayek, a writer and theater director. She worked as the director of the Busi Project, a performing arts project that documents gender-based stories and presents them on stage. And she has over 10 years of experience in facilitating storytelling workshops, documenting personal narratives, and directing public performances. She is also the founder and director of the Tahrir Monologues, a performance of true stories from Egypt's revolution. Sonda, thank you for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. There's so much to be said about the lockdown, but I'm going to try my best to stick to the 5 minutes. What's interesting is the lockdown is already overlapping with all government efforts to close independent spaces. I mean, the past few years in Egypt have witnessed so many cultural and artistic projects closing down. We have actually decided, the Busi project decided to take a pause at the beginning of this year, and this was due to many factors. One of which is we're running out of theater spaces because all of them are closed. I mean, the independent theater spaces are closing down. So the lockdown feels like just a continuation of what's already happening, actually. The fact that there are so many artists at home because of the coronavirus, well, so many of us were already at home. And even if we're not at home, we're out of spaces where we can exhibit our work or perform. And if we're not out of spaces, we're struggling with so many censorship issues. So this is like, I just felt I had to give some context. And what was interesting is at the beginning of the lockdown, what we witnessed an increase in the number of people using the application TikTok, which is where basically people post videos. And it was very interesting because it was turning into like I don't know, it's turning into a platform where people are just expressing ideas and sometimes movements and sometimes dances and singing. And they weren't artists, they were people you would usually never see on stage. And that was something fascinating. But recently, the past 2 months, the government started arresting girls posting videos on that application under the claims that they're breaking moral codes and values. And so at the moment, there are several women in prison because of videos they posted on TikTok because they're being accused of promoting immoral values. That's one thing. The other thing is I feel that because of the lockdown, people are taking to the digital realm even more because of the lockdown due to the coronavirus, and also because of all the actions and procedures that the government are taking. So a few weeks ago, an anonymous girl posted a testimony about a young man raping her. What happened is, few hours later, more women started speaking up, sending anonymous testimonies to an account that was collecting all those testimonies. And in 2 weeks, there were more than 100 testimonies against this guy. And for the first time ever in the history of this country, the government, the police actually took action and arrested the guy. And the National Council of Women made a call and requested that women come forward and testify against him, and they guaranteed complete confidentiality. This is like, I mean, this is something unprecedented. And what happened is, during that investigation, the women were told, we don't care if you were in a relationship with this guy or not, as long as something happened without your consent, this is rape. This is something I personally would never have thought would happen in Egypt. I never thought I would live to see this day. And ever since then, a lot of women are speaking up. The other thing is, one very important thing is a song that was made by, he's a songwriter, and he works mainly in advertising. He created a song few months ago, or maybe last year, about consent. And the song was like tackling the idea of a girl saying no superficially. And so the song was very controversial, and a lot of feminists and women spoke up about this and criticized it. The creator of the song took the song down around 10 days ago and issued an apology. And this is huge. This is just, I mean, this is just unbelievable. So this is what's happening now. More people are speaking up about testimonies, and they're actually publishing stories with their names. A lot of the testimonies are coming out of organizations in the civil society, which is just mind-blowing, because, I mean, we thought those were the safe spaces, but now organizations and projects are asking questions: how do we make our spaces safe? What kind of procedures do we need to take about in order to protect people and guarantee that there is a process if you want to report someone? So it's just, it feels like the country's a bit on fire, and there's good bits and bad bits. And yeah, I just don't want to go over the 5 minutes, but I just wanted to make sure I'm giving bits and pieces of everything.
That's great, thank you. So I just wanted to make a little bit of time for the three of you, if you wanted to ask each other anything or say anything before we open to everyone. You can say no if you don't want to.
From my perspective, you know, as I said before, the online conferences or talks are something that I'm not usually very excited to do. But I'm really keen to, from this the discussion, we can probably brainstorm or like discuss further after this conversation, like a solid platform, hopefully, or like a kind of publications. I love publications.
Yeah.
So where we can probably you know, each artist discuss in a deeper way how the concept of isolation, or not necessarily isolation, I mean being an artist in itself, you know, and like Hirer started, you know, like you go into a lot of obstacles in your career or in your practice, and isolation is probably sometimes you choose to be isolated. It's not a forced isolation. Like for instance now, you know, like when I remember the lockdown time, you know, I didn't feel at all I'm isolated, really. Like I was working on a daily basis, communicating with the artist, and suddenly, like when the government said, okay, there is no lockdown, and you know, like people can go freely in the street, or all shops are open, we were like, we faced a huge, again, like economical crisis. And now I feel like I'm really isolated. Like we're isolated from everything outside, because the life in Lebanon becomes suddenly very depressive, very hard, and extremely, like, you know, like people are like, I mean, at least 70% now, they are under like really like the modest standard of living. And you know, I think this is real isolation, not on a personal level, but on a collective level.
Yeah,
so that's all what I wanted to say.
That's great. It's really important. I mean, I think, you know, first of all, I think it's important to say isolation isn't always bad. right? Sometimes you choose it to
You
go.
decide to isolate yourself, it's not bad.
No, exactly.
When it's your decision, when it's your decision,
Yeah.
you know, you probably enjoy it. You know, we always need this time of isolation in order to reflect, in order to absorb. You know, but when it's like I wish we invited someone, for example, from Gaza. I mean, the artists in Gaza, for example, in the Arab world, they are witnessing like the most humiliating and the horrible state of not only isolation but all other kind of like I don't want to go there again,
No, I understand,
but this is something that is forced on them, and this is they live on it like they live isolation and humiliation and occupation on a daily basis, and this is something they didn't choose.
Absolutely. I think all of those issues will come up again on Friday, because we do have someone from Jenin on the panel. And so I think when we talk about conflict and colonialism and climate crisis, I think those things will come up in a different way, but also in a related way. Okay, unless anybody else wanted to say anything. Okay, if you have questions from the audience, we can start to take them. Let's see what's going on in chat. Mustafa says, thanks to all of you. Special thanks to Sondos for being open and for sharing such a deeply human tragedy crisis. But as with some crises, good comes out of them. So, and Simon said thank you, Simon Ryder. Hi, Simon. I don't see questions in the Q&A so far. Anybody have anything you want to ask? I was interested in thinking about the connections between Lebanon during the Civil War period and now, because there's, there I might give 30 or 40 years between the two of you, right? And
36 years.
Okay.
Even more, I think, even more.
And
it never ended. We're still in this chaos. I don't think like the Lebanon as a state or Lebanese as a people in general, they get healed from this. I mean, we are all under like post-traumatic syndromes,
Yeah.
And if we couldn't till now solve like the basic issues like our garbage, for example, our electricity, like there is no electricity at the moment in Lebanon. We barely get electricity. Generators are not like they can't at the moment handle this shortage of electricity. So at least 5 hours a day we are without no generators and no electricity. So definitely I think I don't want to talk about Lebanon as a state at the moment, or as a government, or all our issues, but we've been in the streets, like asking for the basics for almost now a year or less. But when you hear the news, like the global news, you always again get this feeling of connection between what's happening in Beirut and what's happening in other countries or other cities around the world. But the civil war is a completely huge and deep and very complicated issue. If you're like if you're expecting from me to comment on this, I think like now I don't see how Lebanese can think about the civil war, about the past, if they didn't solve their present, or they don't have like a strong or a solid vision for the future. So
okay, we're racking up some questions, so let me ask you. Hudai, there's a question for you from Loma. Can you say more about the last thing you said? Something about trauma and silence, stress and disorder?
Well, I can say a lot about that, but can you hear me? Am I on? Okay.
Fine.
Well, I just broke down the PTSD to its elements, and the post is really not a huge thing. We know that, but then it eventually goes down to the disorder, and the disorder itself it's what disables you. The traumas and a lot of people live through many traumas, and it's not, and that isolation and what Sundos is saying, I bet that's even a lot more in rape cases. It is horrendous. But I can speak from my own perspective because we have, as a family, lived through the disorder, each in a different way. And it is it is, as an artist, I also am going to talk as an artist, that what I said about where, if there's going to be a narrative, whether or not there's going to be a way of speaking about your own experiences and not, I'm going to go a little bit back. I did this film that I always thought it was my Lebanon film, my first Lebanon film. It's called Cool Breeze. It is a set of electric fans and stuff that eventually try to destroy itself. And I thought that was my first Lebanese film. So I was undergrad, I presented it in class, it went very well, they got accepted, and you know, I didn't bring up the issue of Lebanon, but it was as a work accepted. And the next thing my professor said, now, so why don't you do another piece with a toaster? And I said, we never had a toaster. We didn't have sliced bread, so we didn't know what to do with the toaster, even if we had one. So it kind of, you still keep the topics to yourself, even though the art on the outside is expressing those, trying to process what you lived through. And then in the broader context of Armenian experience and the trauma, there is this whole theory that reason why that the silence itself is the proof that people lived through the trauma. There is a lot of literature lately on that, especially Dr. Mark Nishanian. If you want to, they are in English and French, so you can find them. I would suggest Writers of Disaster, for example, or the historiographic perversion. But through the work, I mean, what I will say that my work does not represent my past, but makes it present again. That's what I'm going to say.
That's great, thanks. Sonda, there's a question for you. How do you work around government censorship? Is this an issue?
It's a nightmare. Okay, so what I did throughout the past years is, because the censorship issue in Egypt is very complicated, because you have several entities who have the authority to censor the work. So there's a censorship committee for cinema, and in order to perform publicly anywhere, you need a censorship permit. The censorship permit from the committee in charge of the censorship on theater, the process is ridiculous. I tried it more than 10 years ago, and the things that they would censor out are as ridiculous as they once took out a line in the story that where a guy was telling another guy, I want to sleep with a girl, and his friend was telling him, I want to sleep with someone too. And so their suggestion was to keep the text limited to someone saying, I want to, and his friend responding, I want that too. Just, you know, leaving the rest to the audience's imagination. So the things that they take out is not just, I mean, it's just, anyway. So what we do is we try to find ways where we can perform without the censorship permit, but that limits us very much, and that limits the number of audiences we can reach. We try to use cultural spaces that basically supposedly are under the embassies. So like the French Institute, the Goethe Institute, the British Council, because if you're inside their spaces, then it's almost like, I mean, I don't want to say that, but the security, the Egyptian state security, they can't walk in and get you. But it's becoming harder and harder. In the past, there were several independent spaces where you can maybe perform for one night. You can find something in the law that says, oh, but if you have people coming with special invitation, not tickets, then they can walk in and maybe watch the show for one night. So throughout the years, I've been trying to find leeways all the time, but that has cost us so much because we haven't been able to reach enough people. The audience are always complaining that we're not performing enough, or they're not able to get in because the spaces are small, and it's been very dangerous because we're always in this, emergency plan. What if someone comes? The thing is that it's not just that. I don't want to talk so much about censorship, but the thing is at the moment is so many entities have the power to censor the work. And so you don't know who's going to come from where. The police, state security, for example, they have like authority to go anywhere and stop anyone, and it's as if we're still living under the emergency law, which means that any gathering is suspicious unless proven otherwise. So this is really how I've been trying to negotiate, and I took the decision to pause the work because it's just been very exhausting trying to go around this for years. So many other people are just, you know, we're just going to submit the work to the censorship and we're just going to end up performing whatever it is that they allow us to perform. But I couldn't do that because I was working on gender-based stories, and the idea was to try to document the stories and to promise the story owners that I can't and I won't censor your story. Your story is going to be told the way you said it. And so it goes right into the integrity and values of the project if I do anything about this. So, yeah.
Very difficult position to be in.
Yeah. I don't want to share more just because I feel like I shouldn't be sharing how I'm running away from censorship.
No. You should share whatever you want to share, but there's more questions. There's a question from Mustafa to all of you. Do you think that isolation can bizarrely bring people closer, even if digitally? For example, people reconnecting with others that others that had not spoken, that they had not spoken with for years? What's the impact on your artistic creativity and these kinds of different connectivities?
Excuse me, can I interrupt you, guys?
Of course.
I think I have to leave. I have to excuse because my battery died, so I had to, to open another computer. You understand this? So I'm really sorry. It was great talking to you, and really thank you again for this opportunity. And hopefully we will meet in a better circumstances.
I'm sure we will. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Albert.
Very much.
Nice meeting.
Okay. Do either of you want to think about that question?
What's the impact on artistic creativity?
About does isolation lead to different kinds of connection?
I mean, as a human, I feel it does. Like I made connections with my neighbors, and I baked a cake and I gave it to my neighbor, and this is not something we do. And I'm connecting one-on-one with people I've never connected with, just because they live in the neighborhood and we are walking distance. So the type of connections are definitely very different and very effective. And there's this ongoing joke that now we have Corona friends, because friends we made during Corona times, just because it was convenient, we were in the same area, or we lost our jobs, and so we have more time to chat online and so on. And so on that level, yes. What the impact on the artistic creativity, what I've been feeling and a lot of friends have been feeling for some time is, at the beginning there was this pressure that, oh my God, there's so much time and space and we can create so much. But then it's just our brains are in a state of shock, and we're paralyzed because the world is changing and it's not going to be the same way again. And somehow we feel pressured that we need to use this time and create. And so it's been very difficult to work, very, very difficult to work for me and for many other friends I know, whether on new projects or projects that have started before the lockdown, and supposedly, and also because everything's changing, and so there are so many unknown factors. So it feels like, why would I work on something when I know the world is ending? Because that's what it felt like. Nothing is going to be the same again.
Yeah. It's easy to imagine.
Yeah.
What a big challenge that is. Huda, did you want to say anything?
I've been in this situation for forever. So I do most of the time work in isolation. It's not anything. I don't want to romanticize this. It's nothing interesting. Just that's how I work, and I actually am connecting with people that I haven't connected with in a very long time, and we're having a very interesting back and forth with an intellectual that I always wanted to contact and start a conversation with, and we are doing that. It's about diaspora and diaspora issues and hybridity. In our case, we have all these questions being able to function equally in different cultures. Like like a hybrid car, it runs on a battery and an engine. So we should be able. We are having that discussion in education, and I'm working on films, and I have. And when you're editing a film, you are always alone anyway, or most of the time. So I'm working on that. But overall situation. I don't know if it's not that Sonda was saying that there is a point of despair, but we've been through this, through that situation before. There are these stages, I remember everybody in the beginning was making jokes. They looked like funny, and then those subsided, and then the anger, and then this acceptance that this is going to go on. It's not the end of the world, but it's not. My question here about art is that when if there's going to be a point of restart, when was there going to be a button that we will press to restart, and where do we start from? Where we left off? Where did we leave off?
Yeah.
And where we're going to go from there? Those should be the questions. And art has been struggling with its own importance in the West, at least, for the last 30, 40 years.
So there's a question for you, Haddad, and then a question for Sondos. Your question is, how are artists experiencing isolation in the US, especially considering the political situation?
How are experiencing? The United States is not a single government, so it's a set of governments. It's very local. Everything is localized. You can go to the county, to the neighborhood, for example. The state has, and then the federal government imposes its rules, and it's been very, very conservative since the late 1980s. The National Endowment for the Arts, whatever they give grants to, that those were the kind of works that get supported. There are mainly mainstream institutions like the opera, the symphony, the county museum, and things like that. Even they do control. They can cut off funding. It is the National Endowment for the Arts. Whatever I'm hearing myself. Is it grants to? Those were the kind of
funny loop kind of thing.
Yeah. So there isn't. I mean, the only thing that, as I said, and as I mentioned, I was talking about this earlier before the thing. The California is going to close down all the museums and gatherings, and including museums and zoos and all kinds of stuff. So that's the only thing. As far as the political situation, the United States thrives in the political situations. They are in your face, and that's what's commendable about the artist community. They are in your face all the time, whether it's, again, local or federal.
And then Sondos, there's a question from Mustafa, I think. What would help you? How can we help you?
Oh, sorry, I was on mute. That's such a big question. Well, speaking of isolation, I mean, we do feel probably as a country and probably as a region isolated from the rest of the world, in the sense that we currently feel that there's a new wave of Me Too wave, but it's just here because of what's happening. And our issue is, because we feel isolated, we feel that the government kind of has authority to do whatever. And so it's always important that whatever is happening, especially when it comes to women's rights and freedom of expression and artistic expression, is expressed abroad, so that when politicians travel, they can't just say, oh, we have freedom, or we're respecting women's rights. So for example, now that there is a campaign actually trying to lobby for the women that have been arrested by the police for posting videos. They just posted videos, and they're being charged for moral accusations. It's ridiculous. Like young girls, teenagers and underage are just thrown behind bars. And so in answer to that question, we just need people to keep spreading the word, so that we don't feel like we're living in a country that's just isolating us from the rest of the world, and the government has a license to do whatever it wants. Also because even though there are positive steps being taken, it feels like the freedom for women here is based on privilege. If the way I look and the way I speak, walk into a police station, I'm not going to be treated the same way a woman from a different economical class gets treated when she walks into a police station. It's very different. I mean, I need to admit that, but this is part of what needs to be discussed and spoken about. So, in answer to your question, please spread the word. I mean, if you hear the news, just share it.
That's great. Are there any more questions?
There's a question that, I mean, the Q&A down there.
I've been reading all the questions in the, oh, Shirin, especially to all artists, especially to Sonda. How can you work with sensitive issues that are very risky concerning your government to prevent backlashes?
That's, we can't. I mean, there are topics we know we can't talk about. We know we can't. We can't talk about politics. We can't talk about LGBTQ communities now. If we do that, we're sending ourselves and anyone else connected to us to prison, right to prison. There's no joke about that. So there are very clear restrictions and other things that we can get away with, but there are risks. So the only way is that we make the compromise of working with very limited numbers, reaching very limited audiences. That's how we can get away for now.
Shirin, do you want to follow up on that question? Did you have, because I know this is an issue in your own work. So Shirin was on the panel on Friday, so
yeah,
we got to talk about this a little bit.
Shirin is a very good friend, and we've worked together, and we've explored.
Okay.
We've explored that topic when it comes to Egypt and Jordan, and our work together.
Yeah, I mean, it's always a challenging issue for any kind of feminist and especially LGBTQIA work in where governments are not accepting of that kind of material. It's not just in the Middle East. There's lots of countries, certainly Africa, and certainly in parts of Asia as well. So yeah, it's no joke. Okay. Goodness, if there are no other questions, we're gonna come in under time. Yes, and you're being instructed by the anonymous Liverpool Arab Arts Festival chat creature to which is Zoe Lafferty, to follow Shirin on her Instagram. So thank you all for coming. Thank you to both of you and to Abed and Absentia for a wonderful discussion. And thank you all for great questions. And we will see you all soon. There's still at least three more events going on, so I hope we'll see you at something. And yes, to the artists, really thank you for taking out your time to be with us. Well, thank you for having us.
Thank you.
The pleasure is entirely ours.
Thank
you. I forgot. I have one more announcement. I was going to let you go, and I was forgetting all about it. One of the things that we thought of doing as a project coming from this is we've got a beta version of a project called I Am Here, which is a mapping project, a global mapping project to help make artists more visible, right? So there will be a link in chat for how you get to the form to put yourself on the map. And it'll be a way to identify artists, not only in the MENA region, but artists from that kind of heritage all across the diasporas and around the globe. So please fill in the questionnaire. Yeah, there it is. The forms link at the bottom. Please do go and fill in the questionnaire at the website. And as I said, it's a beta version. And so we will be launching the project fully and publicly sometime later in the year. So keep an eye out for that. Thanks very much for everything. And wait. Oh, Sonda, is there a particular way of connecting with the campaign for the imprisoned girls?
Yes, I'm going to post the link right now.
Perfect.
And if people can share it, that would be great. I'm going to post it on the chat right now.
Great, that's perfect.
Can we save the chats?
Is there a way to save the chat? Do we know? Somebody said yes.
Oh, it says save chat. There's a dot. Yeah, those 3 dots below.
There you go. Yeah, I would love to have this. I don't know.
I just posted the campaign. Actually, it's a petition. So, I'm sorry, I sent it. I think I privately sent it. Yeah, I just did.
Great.
It's there.
Okay. And there's.
And it's in English and Arabic. And so if everyone can just, people can just share it and sign it, that would be great.
Got it.
Yeah, great.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks again, everybody. And I hope we'll see you very soon at another event tonight or in the next couple of nights. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.